My dad will never read any of these books. So if you're going to hear about him here, it's got to be me. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
And this is the most I'll probably ever hear about him, too. But let's see what he has to say.
So welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son sit down and talk about fantasy books and things of that sort. I'm Zach, the son of that equation.
And I'm Jim, the father. We're glad to have you with us here today, even if we're going to talk about something I might find cringeworthy. But I'm sure it'll be still pretty good. She's a really well-sold author.
She sells well.
There's got to be something to this Sarah J. Maas stuff. If you enjoy this episode and think there's something to it, hit the like button for us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we hope you will. And definitely tell us if you want more of this style of fantasy, because Zach will keep reading and he'll keep talking about it for us.
Now, there's plenty of Sarah J. Maas discourse out there. Some people love her, some people hate her. I'm going to mostly stay away from that in general and just talk about some of these books that I've read as kind of an introductory foray into some more romantasy.
Can I interject? I don't hear a lot of hate for Sarah J. Maas.
There's
some love her, and then some are like, the books are trash, but not hating on her.
There's some Sarah J. Maas hate out there for things and opinions that she has expressed as a person, not usually as an author. And there are a couple of things in some of her writing. I think in some of the series I haven't read as much. Okay. Mostly because I haven't noticed it in the things that I did read as much.
Well, I haven't come across that. Obviously, I'm not, really delving into a lot of Sarah J. Maas info. But tell us, what do you want to say?
So I read ACOTAR. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and then all the rest there.
Which is not everything on my background.
No, you've also got Crescent City and the Throne of Glass series there, which I think they're all interconnected, kind of. One thing that I am potentially excited for about Sarah J. Maas, I am a sucker for an interconnected series of multiple different, like a world, a universe of multiple series. Okay. I love the Cosmere, Sanderson. It's my thing. If this is a chance to have a Sanderson writing romantasy kind of thing, like that style of we've got multiple series that intercross every now and then, I think I'm down for it. Like that's something I could be down for.
I'm sure the author would take that. Yep, I'm like the Sanderson of romantasy. Come, join me.
There's a couple of fun little things about this series. One, my dad would hate it. It is romantasy. There are significant portions spent on relationships and romance arcs and things. They also get more explicit as you go. First one is just like a little explicit. A Court of Silver Flames? Nah, that's pretty explicit pretty regularly. Yeah. If you see your middle schooler reading this series, take it away from them.
Oh, spicy, huh? Oof.
By the time you get to that fifth book, you're having regular semi-graphic depictions of oral sex. Which is not a problem for, like, if I'm reading it, if I'm wanting to enjoy this as an adult and I'm reading it and it's fine. Don't let your middle schooler read this.
Semi-regular depictions. Yeah, I don't need this book.
Like,
it must serve a purpose.
I might be overselling some of that, but it's just really to drive the point home that if you haven't read it yourself, if you don't think it's your vibe, but you've got a kid who you're like, they don't want to get into fantasy and these seem really popular,
stay away.
Make sure they're at a point where, like, that adult content is something that you're comfortable with them being exposed to. Maybe they're comfortable being exposed to. This isn't just stay away from fantasy because Harry Potter is witches and stuff. No, there is adult content.
So a lot of times we talk about adult content just meaning adult themes. It's a little more robust than a young person will be able to appreciate. No, this adult content means put some X's on it. This is adult.
This is the movie that's rated R because of nudity and sexual content, not just violence and language.
Is there violence and language too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which, notably, All of these things I'm super down for in a book. Not in every book necessarily, but I enjoyed these. Some of them are better than others. The first one starts a little cringy, and then through most of it is a little cringy.
Interesting.
Second book was great. The third book, pretty good. The fourth is just kind of a filler. It's not really the fourth book. The actual fourth book, which is the fifth, had some of, I think it has some of the best like fantasy world building, writing, and things. Has some of the coolest moments. Also is the most graphic. So it's a weird.
Is that the final book?
Moving along. No, there will be more.
Oh, so the series is not done.
This series is not finished.
Oh my. Okay. So there's 5 books out there so far, and those who are enjoying it are just dangling, waiting for more.
Kind of. I think you could, if you wanted to, with this series, read the first 3 and stop. I think after that, there are other loose threads that get continued for more story, but like that is a good arc.
Okay.
If you want to read just the first book, that's fine, and you will like a character so much more than if you ever read any other word by this author. If you read a single other word beyond this book, one of the main characters of the first book is awful. And you can see it in the first book, but you've got blinders on a little bit. You ignore it. And then you're like, oh, no.
Okay. So is Sarah J. Maas worth the hype based on what you've read of this series?
From what I can tell, they're entertaining reads. It is something that I enjoyed immersing myself into the world a little bit, getting into some of that, seeing it. I can see the attraction for a lot of people, but where I think she really shines is being a prolific author.
Just churning out books.
She's got a lot of books out there. They are interconnected, and this is where I draw the Sanderson comparison. Mm-hmm. Are they the best prose? Are they the best written? Are they always the most original idea? Not always. Not all these things. But there's a reason she sells as well as she does. And some of that is the amount of content. And some of it is a good enough quality of content that it is worth immersing yourself into that.
Has Rach read these?
She's read some of the first book.
So
she read like maybe half the first book. At first she like DNF'd.
Okay.
Like I said, it starts kind of cringy, and there are some hangups with the first one. This is unfortunately a series that does suffer from the first book is by far the worst. And it isn't super, like, it's necessary to understand the story. It's not always super representative of what the rest of the series will be. It's a really weird thing to see and compare, but it really feels like the series starts at book 2. But you need to read book 1 to get it.
This is not an uncommon theme, though, amongst books of all genres. When there's a series, the first book is quite often nowhere close to the best book. And in some cases, it even has strong weaknesses that you got to just get past because it's still laying out some foundational content.
Look, this isn't the Wheel of Time. It's not that good. It's not as good as the Wheel of Time. But A Court of Thorns and Roses is your eye of the world of this series.
Sure enough. I did an episode recently on Shannara, the Shannara series, and same thing. The first book is potentially the weakest book in the entire series.
And that's like 30-some books.
But you need to read the first book because it lays out a lot of foundation that upon which everything else builds. But if someone's like, should I read Shannara? I'll try the first book. And if you decide, oh, this is horrible, I'm never going to read more, you've made a bad decision because that's not the book to judge it on. Read book 2. If you still feel that way, quit. So you'd say the same thing here. First book's a little cringy, but if there was some interest,
if you
read the second book and then
here's
judge.
Where I ultimately go. If you have some interest either in the main female character by the end of the first book, or some interest in the world in general, because there is a like glimpse of what this world is and the interesting fantasy world building. You see some of that. And if you've got some interest, keep reading because you'll end up liking it better. You really will.
You've given us just some details, generalities about the book, but the setting, what kind of setting is it in the first place?
Think a little bit like your classic fantasy, low tech, not quite medieval, but kind of. You've got kingdoms and queens and things, but it's a backdrop setting of a world that used to be like fairy fae controlled, and now it's like separated. You've got that, and then you've got the humans mortal separated by this magic wall thing.
Okay, so that answers the second question. Magic is involved.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it's more than just humans.
Absolutely. In fact, most of the characters that you interact with are not human.
So the court of Thorns and Roses is a fae court?
Yeah, when I say this is fairy smut, it's because it's the fae creatures and things.
So if we're having all this sex stuff, but it's a bunch of fae, then it's not real and it's okay, right?
Sure.
Anything else you think someone should know before they decide whether or not to dive into this?
I don't know if you need to know this, but I want to say it just because I want to get your reaction on it.
Okay.
The fact that wings and like certain sections of them and tips can be erogenous zones, really, really out there. Like, I'm down for it, but it was really weird.
No, that doesn't shock me. I can roll with that. Why not? They're delicate. I'm sure they're sensitive. Yeah,
it makes sense. It just was like,
right.
Okay.
All right, this has been entertaining, even though, again, I won't read this series. I've got so much else out there to read that I don't think this is my jam. Still, it sounds like it has some merits. It has some complexities. It has enough to entertain for those who are into especially romantasy.
I was entertained.
Thanks for sharing about it, Zach. Because again, we have people out here watching this who love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they'd never get it just from me. We need you.
Which
for
notably,
this channel.
If you're watching this, I'm gonna go on to read the other series behind them that I haven't, because they're on my list. I've got some other things on my list that I'm going to enjoy reading as well in this kind of vibe and genre. Please give me more suggestions, because my dad's never going to give me suggestions in this area.
No, I'm just not. It's true. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.